So I started learning cinematography while I was in college and first started understanding cinematography, specifically using and shooting on a Sony f55. So when I first moved to Los Angeles, I bought a Sony FX9, my first big boy camera, and it was great. I loved that camera to death. It was one of the first Sony cameras that had the image quality that I felt put what I saw in my mind onto a screen and onto a hard drive, and also started opening doors for me in my career and pushed me creatively. And so then as my career continued to progress, I hit a point where I needed a B camera more than I needed an A camera. The FX9 can only be an A camera. You know, it's a very large body, and I was hitting a point where I needed something that I could fly on a gimbal, I could use in weird, you know, tight confines and situations. And most of the time, an A camera at that point was already being provided for me, either being sub-rented for a production, or I was shooting for somebody else that already owned equipment and was wanting to shoot Canon or Sony, but something else. Just in general, I no longer needed an A camera. And at that point, it was bye-bye FX9 and hello Canon C70. Which it was right in time because prices were starting to go down on the FX9 on the used market. But I was able to sell it for exactly the amount of money that I paid for it, which is, that never happens. I don't know how that happened, but it paid for a full Canon C70 package, some more lenses, some more gold mount batteries, a whole like expansion of my shooting package. And it was also a great camera, endless dynamic range, as good as the FX9, as good as an Arri Alexa, but in a tiny little compact body, much better battery life than an FX9, as good of autofocus as Sony, and they added internal RAW right before I bought it, which is exactly the reason I bought it over a RED Komodo, which was also another consideration, but there were some compromises. You know, as a B camera to C300 Mark IIIs and C500 Mark IIs, it was great on a gimbal in those circumstances I mentioned, but at the same time, in a lot of ways, it wasn't quite any more of a cinema camera than a mirrorless camera. Aside from having built-in NDs, it still only had one HDMI port as an output, so you couldn't go to multiple monitors at the same time, or a monitor and a Teradek, so on and so forth. It just had its one fragile but bright and sharp flip-out screen, and it was still bigger than a small hybrid or mirrorless camera. So it was an in-between, but at the same time, it still wasn't always the best at any one thing. And then I got lucky. I got my RED Weapon Dragon DSM-C2 eBay trash, yada, yada, yada. The whole spiel that I've been saying over and over again that everyone's tired of. And yeah, then I had two cinema cameras. Cinema cameras, you know? And that was also great. But after a while of having two cinema cameras, both a little bit too different from each other, I felt the winds changing once again. And technically I'm supposed to now get up like as the wind carries me away, but I'm gonna fall on my ass, so I'm just gonna. So the streaming bubble had popped, and it didn't matter what I owned anymore. I was no longer shooting feature-length documentaries. I was just shooting smaller commercial work, promo work, you know, just in general, things where nobody really cared what I personally owned. I was doing even more projects where I wasn't providing the equipment. And to top it all off, Canon released the C80, which started to lower the used market for the C70. And I really didn't see myself upgrading in that direction. Even though it would have fixed some of the issues I had with the C70, I felt like it was time to abandon ship once again. So I figured it was finally time to do something I had not considered in a long time, which was to switch back to a camera that could both shoot stills as well as video. I mean, photography has become a more important part of my life, and I'm wanting to incorporate that more into my career. And as we all know, especially in the film industry, it truly is diversification or death. So a quick sidebar, I know an obvious choice would have been a Sony FX3. I like the FX9. I shoot on the FX3 all the time for a variety of projects. I just don't really like it. I do like full frame and large format. That's a very, hot button topic these days, and everyone, like, client-wise likes it. But yeah, FX3, not enough resolution for me. It's only a 12 megapixel sensor. That's not much more than my old T2i, so you're only stuck in full frame. You can't do a Super 35 crop for shooting on old cinema lenses, or just for all the flexibility that allows. And also no viewfinder, which I need a viewfinder in a camera. I love an EVF. All of my photography up to this point had been predominantly on 35mm film, where all you have is a viewfinder, and I just feel like it's not a camera without a viewfinder. Like, even for shooting video, if I have the ability to have an EVF of some sort, I would like to have that. I mean, when I first bought my Panasonic GH4, before I even bought my first monitor, I bought a Cineroid EVF, little standard definition screen with the eyepiece. Poor little thing, rest in peace. But that's just, I just feel like that makes a camera, and FX3 ain't got that. But the FX2 does, and we're going to mention that later on. And then Nikon bought RED, which was interesting. And I know personally that moving forward, I would like to probably stay in the RED ecosystem. I've always liked the image quality above a lot of other cameras, even through all of the technical pains of shooting on RED and working with RED, which is somewhat better these days. And so I sold my C70 and set my sights on the most bang for buck I could get for my money, which so happened to be the flagship, or at least the flagship's little brother. Oh God, the Nikon Z8.
It may seem like you're under some kind of spell. You're walking on sunshine, feeling extra well. You're all smiles, happy as you can be. Feels like a dream, but can't you see that it's just me?
So I've had the Z8 for almost a year now. I'm going to pretend like it's been less time. I was going to make this video last year. I bought it in April of 2025. It's March of 2026. And all in all, it's been really good. It's been everything I hoped it would be. A couple of quirks and features like any camera, and only one real, distinct complaint that we'll get into. But it's a camera. So just to start off talking about the thing that matters the most in a camera, the image quality, it's really good. I mean, it's 8K up to 60 frames per second. Not quite as much dynamic range as like a C70 or an FX9, but still very good for what it is. It can even do internal RAW, similar to the C70 and other cameras, although I haven't even really used that feature yet. And you have 4K, full frame 4K Super 35 crop, up to 120 frames per second. And honestly, that's all you can really ask for these days. But maybe we should get a little bit more technical, and I should get out of this sun. So I guess this is as good of a place as any to talk about the sensor. We have a 45 megapixel stacked CMOS sensor that's also a dual native ISO sensor. The low base is 800 ISO and the high base is 4000, which, funny enough, same as on my FX9, so that was, you know, kind of nice to be in familiar territory. And it's really good. Being a stacked sensor, you have better rolling shutter performance through little electronic magic. I'm not sure how that impacts like your noise floor and so on and so forth. I feel like my understanding is stacked sensors are a little bit worse in low light, but obviously has a faster readout speed. But I mean, does it look okay? I'm in a mine. There's just so much detail and resolution in photos. And then again, as I mentioned before, up to 8K 60 frames per second video using the full readout of the sensor is great. And speaking of low light performance, given where I am right now, obviously something like the FX3 and the FX6, which I do shoot a lot of low light on a different show, having that high base at 12,800 versus this at 4,000, I feel this push to 12,800 isn't too much worse. I still think you can get a very usable image, assuming that you do have an amount of light. Like right now, I am lit. You know, I'm not just in a dark tunnel with no light. You know, that would never work. But I am using a very minimal amount of light in comparison to what, you know, I would need if I was shooting on my RED or a camera from 10 years ago. I feel it's a better in-between to have 4,000 instead of 12,800 as the high base, because it's right on that cusp of, oh, I just need a little bit more light, bump to the high base, re-expose, and you still have a good image. But yeah, I mean, Sony is still probably the leader in low light. But, you know, considering I would have never considered a Nikon camera until now, the performance is pretty damn good. And right now, just for reference, this lens is at an f2, 75 millimeters, 4000 ISO, 180 degree shutter, 24 frames per second. And the wide shot was at a 2.8 on a 20 millimeter lens. Also, there's a lot of bats. I hope that was in frame. I don't think it was, but...
It's been in frame at least once.
Oh, heck yeah. Got a little friend. You know, it also just feels great in the hands. I think a lot of people have said that it feels like a DSLR, and I think that's definitely the case. You know, it's just like a chunky old DSLR in a good way. And the button placement is very good. You know, everything is in a way that is ergonomic and accessible. It is kind of annoying that you have to hit a button and scroll a dial to change the ISO, but it's not the end of the world. And now an unpopular opinion is that I actually really like the tilt out LCD as opposed to the flip and rotating LCD, just because when I'm shooting, especially if I don't have an external monitor, this just feels a lot more natural to have the monitor right in line with the body. And you know, it's a nice big screen, not as big as the new Nikon ZR, but it's nice and big and bright, aside from one issue that I have with it that again we'll pick up later. But yeah, I really like the way this is built, and it feels very sturdy as opposed to something like the C70, which had some issues. Obviously, if it had the new thing that everybody has, that's the flip out, tilt, do everything everywhere all at once screen that, you know, Panasonic and Sony have now, that would be ideal, you know, best of everything. But I much prefer this than having it flip out on the side, getting in the way of the ports like the HDMI and your audio. This works perfectly for me. Now, even better is the EVF. It's big, it's bright, it's the best electronic viewfinder I've ever used, and that's comparing to like the, you know, viewfinder loop on the FX9, the old F55 screen, newer Alexa viewfinders, which are also still very, very good. But you know, I look in it and it's a nice big image, and again, supposedly it's like one of the brightest that have ever been made. I don't know how accurate that is anymore. And now, obviously, for a lot of people in the video world, it's less common to shoot like this when you're shooting video on a mirrorless camera. But I find a lot of time, again, I just love having an EVF. And I mean, this is probably one of the best ones on the market, so it should be good enough for me. I mean, honestly, I feel like every camera should be legally required to have a viewfinder of some sort, on a threat of death if a company tries to not have one. Honestly, as much as everyone hates the FX2 that came out recently, I would probably choose it over any other of this little Sony FX bodies just because it has a viewfinder. But I like this one. And so now the way that I've built out the camera, even though it might look a bit overkill to some, it's still a lot more stripped down than the way I used to rig out these kinds of cameras. Like if you look back to pictures of my GH4 and GH5, this is a lot more reasonable. The camera is in this Nitsi cage, which I feel is probably the best cage on the market. I do wish that it came with a base plate for 15mm rods. They don't make one, but it'd be nice to have one that's like, you know, at the industry standard height. But it has, you know, plenty of mounting points. I like that it has 2 separate cold shoes, and it mounts to the camera body very solidly through the original strap eyelets there. And it's just, it's a perfect cage. It's everything I want out of a camera cage. And then on the side here, I have this little surprise Mouseketool that is this little side handle. I've never put a handle on the left side of a camera before, or like, you know, a small camera like this, but there's something about it. Having this hand grip that juts a bit further forward, it feels really natural. This is the Global Dynamics United little stubby cowboy handle that I got with the big cowboy handle that's on my RED there. And it's just, it's surprisingly comfortable. I would not have at first, I didn't think I was going to have a use for it when I first bought it. And it works great. I think if anyone out there owns or has used one of those older, large, like medium format Pentax cameras that has the side handle, you know exactly what this feels like. And it makes sense. And so then along with this, I did actually install this one base plate that I got that used to be for like a C300 Mark I from years and years ago from 16:9 ink. Just because I was able to cobble it together in a way that works. It's almost at the correct height. It adds a lot of extra counterbalance to the bottom of the camera, which is nice, especially when I have a big monitor on top. It might be a bit overkill. I don't always use it, but it's on there. And, you know, we're keeping the history of digital cinema alive, I guess. And then for a monitor, I have this piece of NATO rail up top so that I can throw on this little NATO monitor clamp, little coily cable. And I love using these Hollyland Mars wireless monitors just because you have a very nice, bright, sharp little 5-inch monitor plus wireless transmitter all built in. I know they've moved on to their now Pyro series, but these still work great. And this is the Mars M1. I have a bunch of them. They're real neat. And so this is the big boy setup. If I'm just doing stills or I'm just trying to be incognito, I'll strip all this off and just use the camera body with the side grip. But otherwise, you know, this has been a great little run and gun kind of situation. And now for lenses, in this kit, I obviously have some adapters because we love adapting lenses. I have PL mount adapter for using obviously PL mount cinema lenses like I have on the RED right now. And then I also have a Canon EF adapter. When I first bought the camera, I shoot on a lot of EF glass that I don't personally own, but I wanted just a lens to get started with for the camera. I knew I needed to buy an EF mount adapter, which Canon autofocus lenses on a Nikon body working pretty seamlessly. That's a crazy concept, very wacky. But I bought a little Canon 17-40 f4, which is this, you know, kind of small L series zoom that's pretty old, but it was decent. Just a bit slow. It was a good gimbal lens, but I realized that I wasn't taking advantage of the whole point of switching to a mirrorless body, which is companies can make these tiny little lenses with really great image quality and really great autofocus. And so what I ended up buying is this little kind of mini cine set consisting of the Viltrox 20mm f2.8 and then the 40mm and 75mm TT Artisan f2 primes. The Viltrox, it's a nice wide lens, good for gimbal work. It's super sharp and has no focus breathing. Doesn't have a lot of character, but I mean, all three of these lenses are less than $200 a piece. But the Viltrox is great. as clean as like Sony glass or anything else. They have a 14mm that's really wide that I would love to get. And then the TT Artisan lenses, this 75mm is as good of a portrait lens as I think anyone could hope for. They both have a bit of vignetting, a bit of just like kind of that like vintage imperfection, but with autofocus and, you know, all those kinds of fancy technological features that people have now that I have not taken advantage of up to this point for some reason. And yeah, can you, like, this is $200, less than $200, and it's good enough. And then finally, a camera isn't a camera without batteries because you can't shoot nothing. So I put together a little kit. Obviously, I have the original battery that I bought for the camera, or that I have the original battery that came with the camera, and then I got this little kit from Tilta, who I guess makes batteries now. That's 4 of these nifty little, you know, Nikon batteries that, aside from being in a cool color, they have a USB-C port, so you could charge one of these by itself, which is also wacky. A lot of wacky things in this modern world of ours. And then it comes in this little charging case that lights up, which makes it better, and just charges with USB-C power delivery super fast, and it charges all 4 of them in one go. And obviously the battery life on this isn't as good as something as like the FX3, which I know I've been doing a lot of comparisons between this and the FX3, but it was kind of the other obvious choice of a camera to reinvest in. But for a day of shooting, 5 batteries for the camera plus some monitor batteries, it's about all you need, I have found so far. Well, hey there, campers. It's definitely not 2 weeks later. It's definitely not 100 degrees outside now. And we're definitely not back here because I forgot something expensive. And I'm definitely not in a different outfit. So don't worry about it. But we got to talk about photography. The point of a stills camera, you know, taking one picture instead of 24 or 60 or 120 a second. The photography section here is going to be a little bit shorter because at the end of the day, I'm more of a director of photography than a photographer. Even though I guess if you take pictures, you are a photographer, but I don't feel that I'm the best point of reference for this camera and stills. But we're going to talk about it. And I guess to talk about it, I should probably be somewhere where I can actually take some photos. So we're going to go this way. So as a photography camera, I mean, it is the top of the line camera for Nikon, this and the Z9. So it's got to be pretty good, right? And it definitely is. Again, we have that 45 megapixel sensor, great autofocus. But my favorite thing, especially coming as somebody who isn't truly a photographer, is this little handy dandy switch that lets you go just instantaneously from photo to video mode and back. So I can be in a circumstance where, you know, I'm shooting like product video, but then, oh, we also want to get some stills for social or whatever, and I could just flip a switch, shoot whatever I need to. It's a nice little bit of convenience that's handy. And a great example, been shooting video all day and suddenly, oh, we need to switch. And I want to take this nice little photo here. I can just, without my sunglasses, frame up a nice shot, and you got pictures, and you can take a lot of them. And another thing of having such a high resolution photography camera is the whole video that I made about film scanning with the RED and all that. And it's complicated. Don't got to do that no more, because I've been using this for scanning my film photography as well. Obviously high resolution, all I have to do is take a single still frame. I don't have to run it through DaVinci Resolve. I can just edit it in Lightroom. It's a lot easier, it makes a lot more sense. Yeah, so that was a big help as well. The point is, I still won't call myself a photographer yet, but for photography, having an actual photo camera makes sense. If you want to take pictures, buy a camera that takes pictures, I guess. And so another obvious question is, how is it matching with the Red? Which, you know, that was probably one of the points behind buying it, right? Yes, it's fine. I keep saying it's fine about everything, but that's kind of the honest answer. You know, nowadays I really feel that you can match just about any moderately high-end camera to one another through color grading, of course. But, you know, now that Nikon owns RED, they've released the same RED like creative LUTs for the Nikon N-Log, which works pretty well. I have even, like, I use them for monitoring both on the Z8 and on my RED. As well, sometimes I've included those LUTs when giving footage to clients just so that they have an easy pipeline for matching the two cameras. Really, the only difference is white balance, although with this older RED, I kind of feel like that's the case, like the Dragon sensor versus some of the newer RED sensors. So what I would love to do is do a comparison between this era of RED plus, like, you know, a V-Raptor, V-Raptor XE, Komodo, whatever, and the Z8. Obviously the Z8 isn't marketed as being like directly compatible with RED like the Nikon ZR is, but I think this is a better sensor than what's in the ZR, because I think the ZR, that's the same sensor as the Z6 III or whatever it is. It's a lot of Z's. It's putting me to sleep. That's how many Z's. That's a bad joke. I don't know, what's the end of that? Stop. Well, I know, it's good that you're laughing. That means that might have been funny.
It was funny.
I mean, I would love to have internal LUTs in the Z8 where I can actually change the LUTs, but c'est la vie, I guess. Okay, so something that I was gonna shoot properly, and I don't think we're gonna have time. I do have one actual little complaint, which is that on this screen, which is a very good screen, it gets very bright in daylight, which we're not representing well right now. However, if I set it to its full brightness, the issue I have is that it's not representative of my actual exposure. So what I mean is that Jana's about to follow the script. I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it. If you're looking at an image with the view assist, which is kind of like the little built-in LUT when you are shooting in N-Log, the image looks brighter than it's actually being recorded. And if you go back to just seeing the flat image without any view assist, it looks different. And the waveform also isn't quite as accurate as I feel like it should be. So if I'm shooting in a run and gun situation without an extra monitor, just trying to expose off of this screen, a lot of times I end up underexposing by trying to protect my highlights, which it's worth doing. This doesn't have quite as much highlight dynamic range as some other cameras. And so to attempt to not overexpose, you end up underexposing a bit too much. And so obviously that's an issue. I wish there was a way that we could load our own LUTs into the camera so that even if we had to create a LUT to compensate for it, even if it's an issue with the way the monitor displays the image, you would be able to compensate for it. Whereas as is, you know, I can go into a day shooting with this camera with that in the back of my mind so that I am like mentally compensating for it as I'm shooting and exposing. But if I need to just throw this camera at somebody and be like, here, you shoot with this, if I don't have the time to explain all that ahead of time, there's going to be issues. And so that's really the one little complaint that I have. I mean, I've also been using the Z8 alongside Canon and Sony cameras, and the broadcast people that I deal with haven't cared. They are just like, yep, that's fine. Kind of like what I keep saying. So, you know, unlike all these YouTubers color grading on their MacBook Pros, actual like industry television people haven't cared. So I think it might be good enough. Well, now that the sun is setting on this beautiful $3,000 two-bed, one-bath apartment in downtown LA, no parking included, I guess I've said just about everything that I have said already to my fiance about 500 times leading up to finally making this video. I I've said everything I need to say about the Nikon Z8. I also think I've said everything I need to say about literally every other camera I've ever owned, from my portable T2i to my GH4 and GH5, FX9, F55, C300s, all of them. Everything that I've wanted to mention in a video for all of my YouTube career so far. I was like, I'm just gonna squish it all into one video, I suppose. Sorry. But I feel like somebody's history with cameras, it's like somebody's history with any kind of tool or just life experience in general. It all leads to the present. And I think it better informs why I've made the choices that I've made. And when I hear other people discuss their choices in life, having that context, I think it matters. But at this point, the TLDR is the Nikon Z8's real cool. I take good pictures, know have to develop film. The RED is still cool. Cameras are pretty cool. I mean, what else is there to say other than cameras? And so I hope you'll continue to follow me on my weird, wacky little filmmaking journey whenever I can actually be bothered to make an actual YouTube video. I just hope this video is at least somewhat enjoyable, somewhat educational, and I guess I'll see you on down the line. Adios for now. And for all the things I already said, so I don't know why I'm saying it again. See, it's bad writing is what it is. I got it. Okay, I said that I love her or something. Anyways.
Okay, camera's rolling.
I don't remember the rest of it. What's the next thing after that?
Suddenly, instead of shooting feature length doc.
Gotcha. I was I'm there though.
Broken.
Okay, next. I do a lot of uhs, and so I know I'm gonna cut it out, and so I have a second to think. Taking forever to roll. We just need something. But maybe we should get a little bit more technical, and I should get out of this sun. Because that gets us into the mind, Jana. You see how it works? I did it. Does that work? No, that's not true.
Do it again.
In what world would I not be getting sand on my pants? There's the sand. Jesus Christ, these are the pants. That's the bat. That's why I'm wearing my hat, is so that the bat doesn't.
Rolling. Oh, hold on. Jana needs to put on her ears. Okay.
Testing 1, 2, 3, testing.
You sound like a person.
Okay. That do I? I wanted to sound like the mine.
You sound like this. You sound like a Knott's Berry Farm character.
My name's Whittles.
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay, did you see anything that concerned you elsewhere? Like you looked away concerned.
Oh, it was because I heard a cow moo.
Okay. And we're gonna skip ahead. This is us fast forwarding. That's the fast forwarding sound. Also, there's lots and lots of bats. There could be more than one. He's going real fast if it's just one.
Yeah, I think it is just one right now. Zoom, zoom.
Zoom, zoom. Okay, so now what needs to happen? I'm gonna leave. No, I shouldn't. Can I go down this way without dying? Z8. This one. Yeah, bought that. And then we did more stuff. And then she's saying, we gotta move on. We gotta move on. Let's, what? Keep vamping. Not vamping. I can't vamp. I'm glad I gave you a clipboard. Hang on. We need. The clipboard, especially with all the stuff on the back of it, is. Where's that from?
Are you filming?
Yeah.
Oh! This is from Joanne.
Who's Joanne?
A dear old friend.
Ah.
Used to overcharge me for that.
Okay. That was good content.
You know the red's still on.
Yeah, I know. There's a back and forth there.
Oh.
And this is how set up with the lights.
Oh boy.
And this is how dark it is. I think this is a really good way of showing, like, literally how much better the camera does than my iPhone.
Again, don't die.
Just kidding.
We're just gonna pretend like we have like a cool establishing shot of the mine and why my costume is inconsistent and everything else, but it's as dark outside as it is in here at this point. So we're just little guys.
We're just little guys.
I'm gonna take a little sip. A little sippy sip of water.
That's not Gavin. Gavin.
She's genuinely stressed. This isn't making it into this. Okay.